And today's Better Together. And what that means in Better Together is that we all stay in here today together. And what we're doing is we're actually in a series called It's Just Not Convenient. And we're in a series and we're trying to prepare us for the building that we're going to move into someday. See, the building to me is not a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal, don't get me wrong. We're going to celebrate, it's going to be awesome. But what I'm more concerned about is us when we move into the building. The way we think, the condition of our hearts. Is the Spirit of God going to be there? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to talk what it means to be a part of Mountain Ridge Church. We're trying to explain the 5 things that we expect from people that say, hey, Mountain Ridge Church is my church home, and what we're trying to do is walk through what it means to say, hey, it is my home, and because it's my home, we do these 5 things. It's just normal for us to live this way. And so what we're going to do today, I'm going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to see a video, and then Kim's going to come up, and then she's going to take what I say, and she's going to make it better. She's going to make it a little bit more precise, a little bit more practical with all the kids, and then I'm going to come up and close, and I'm going to close in prayer. I probably, we're going to have a time for the kids, for us to pray for the kids, so I think that's how we're going to close today. But last week, one of the things I read, I want to recap a little bit of last week. Last week we read what Jesus said to his disciples around him. And let me just share this with you real fast because it kind of sets us up for where we're going today. He said this, and we read this last week. You are truly my disciples if you live as I tell you to. And you will know the truth, and the truth, Jesus said, will set you free. But we are descendants of Abraham, they said. We have never been slaves to any man on earth. What do you mean, set free? Jesus replied, you are slaves to sin, every one of you, and slaves don't have rights, but the Son has every right there is. It's so interesting in the story because Jesus turns to the people right around him and he says, listen, you're spiritual slaves. I can see it in you. You're beaten up, you're tired, and you're not living the way you want to live. Like, I can see the true condition of your life. And those around Jesus were saying, we don't get it. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. We've never been a slave. What do you mean set free? What do you mean being a slave? Like, we pay the bills, we mow the lawn, we get the kids where we're supposed to be, I'm putting money in my 401k, we have the insurance, I have the new car, like, everything physically is okay. Physically, everything's fine, and Jesus almost was saying, I'm not talking about you physically. I'm not talking about, do you get good grades or not? I'm not even talking about, do you have insurance? I'm not talking about you physically. I'm talking about you spiritually. Spiritually, you become spiritual slaves. And he says, I know this because you're tired, you're beaten down, you're not living the way you want to. Like, this is the way you want to live, but this is the way you're really living. And Jesus said, you're living in spiritual slavery. And we taught last week that the number one expectation around here at Mountain Ridge Church, the number one greatest, most supreme expectation we can ever have of anybody is for us to learn what it means to love God. For us to learn what it means to pursue after God. It should be normal as an individual, as a couple, as a family, that we're pursuing God. So in those moments where we're tired, we're beaten down, we're not living the way we feel like we should be living, in those moments, we need to be a people where it's normal to pursue God and be freed from that slavery that we can walk into. We said last week the greatest expectation of Mountain Ridge Church is to figure out what it means to love God and to pursue God. It should be normal that we engage in this stuff. So this week, I want to read for you what Jesus said about what it means to treat others. And before I read this, I want to explain something to you because it gives you context for what Jesus is about to say. It's really interesting because back in the day when Jesus was born and he was raised, the Roman people, they had overthrown the Jewish people. They ruled over the Jewish people. And the Jewish people very, very much deeply resented this. They did not like Romans. They did not like the Roman rule. They were very angry, very frustrated, and completely powerless. So you can imagine the rub against the Roman people. And so the Jewish people, however, they had hope. Because there have been years and years of prophecy that they heard that said, there's a Messiah coming. There's going to be a Messiah coming, and he's going to free you. He's going to redeem you. There is a Messiah coming. So the entire Jewish people are in wait. They're hoping for, they're praying for, they're looking forward to a Messiah that will come and absolutely free them from this Roman rule. And they're waiting for this young buck to show up, get on a white horse, and lead a military revolt against Rome. They're like, this is going to happen. We're looking for the Messiah. And you can imagine that when Jesus shows up on the scene, you can imagine how disappointed they were to hear Jesus say the following thing. I'm going to read for you what Jesus said to them, because they thought he's the Messiah, because he said, I am the Messiah. So they're thinking, oh good, here's the next young buck, and he's doing miracles, and this is the guy. He's going to lead a military revolt against Rome. We'll be free. We love this guy. Let's get behind this guy, because maybe we'll be free from Roman rule. Let me read for you how Jesus said to treat other people. He said this. Here's another old saying that deserves a second look. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. And then Jesus says, is that going to get us anywhere? Here's what I propose, he said. Don't hit back at all. If someone strikes you, stand there and take it. If someone drags you into court and sues for the shirt off your back, gift wrap your best coat and make a present of it. If someone takes unfair advantage of you, use the occasion to practice the servant life. No more tit for tat. Live generously. Jesus was actually saying, if someone hits you, take it. If someone sues you, give it to them. If you feel unfair, like if you get dinged up in life and your kids are treated unfairly, you're treated unfairly, Jesus said, absorb it. Now, here's the interesting thing. This does not sound like a man who's going to lead a military revolt against Rome, does it? Can you imagine how disappointed they were to hear who they thought the Messiah was going to be, to say stuff like this? Can you imagine? They were disappointed. A few of them were deeply offended, and they would just walk away. Can you imagine? Because they hated the Romans. Why do you talk like this, absorb this kind of stuff? What do you mean when someone hits you, take it? What do you mean when someone sues you, just give it to them? What do you mean that when you're treated unfairly, you just absorb it? This is this is highly argumentative words that Jesus is sharing. This is bizarre stuff in their culture at the time. And Jesus is sharing this stuff. And this is why he's sharing this stuff. Because he knows that the only way that you're going to break the cycle of sin and pain and death in this world, the only way you're going to break that cycle in your marriage where it's a tit for tat, right? You hurt me, I hurt you. You hurt me, I hurt you. The way we live with some of our friends, our bosses, the people in the community, that tit for tat living. Oh, you did this, I'll never forget. And I do this, and you do this, and I do this, and I do that. And it's a cycle, and it gets worse, and it gets worse. And then we get divorces, and then all of a sudden everything begins to melt down. And we have church splits, and then we have businesses where the people at the head can't work with each other, and it's just bad. And it gets swirled, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And all of a sudden, things go bad. And Jesus said the only way you're ever going to break that cycle of sin, the only way you're going to break that cycle of pain, the only way you're going to break that cycle that leads to death is somebody has to step up to the plate and say, I'm going to absorb this. I'm going to take your junk. I'm going to take your sin and your pain, and I'm going to take it. I'm going to absorb it, and I'm going to give back to you love and grace. I'm going to give back to you what you don't deserve, because my God gave me what I don't deserve. I'm going to give to you what you don't deserve. It's a cycle, isn't it? And the only way you're ever going to break it, the only way it's ever going to work is if you just absolutely step up to the plate and say, I'm going to absorb this one, and I'm going to give back love and grace and mercy. I love meeting people, especially married people. This is why I don't do counseling, and this is why people don't call me and ask for suggestions or email me. I love when I meet a couple, and they're just at each other's throats, and they're like, I just can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. And they said, and I ask them, well, what's your remedy? What are you doing with each other? We're just, he hurt me and she hurt me, and you don't understand because it gets worse and worse and worse. And I like to ask them, how's it working out for you? Like the tit for tat living. How's it working out for you? Well, it's not. We're just ripping. How's it working out for you? Have you ever thought maybe what Jesus was saying was right? To be a disciple of Jesus, you absorb. And you give back love, grace, and mercy. Because it's the only way to break the cycle of sin and death. And then I always get this one. I love this one. Well, who goes first? Well, the most mature one. Ha! What do you think of that? That's how I like to respond. This is why no one calls me. Jesus keeps talking. He says this: you're familiar with the old written law, love your enemy, or you love your friend, and the unwritten companion, hate your enemy. I'm challenging that, Jesus said. I'm telling you to love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with the energies of prayer. Then you will be working out of your true selves, your God-created selves. This is what God does. He gives his best, the sun to the warm and the rain to nourish, to everyone regardless, the good and bad, the nice and nasty. If all you do is love the lovable, do you expect a bonus? Anybody can do that. If you simply say hello to those who greet you, do you expect a medal? Any run-of-the-mill sinner does that. And Jesus ends with this. He says, in a word, what I'm saying is, grow up. You're kingdom subjects. Now live like it. Live out your God-created identity. Live generously and graciously towards others the way God lives towards you. Jesus is saying, listen, here's the new norm. I am bringing a revolution. I am bringing a change. But I'm not going to do it with the military. We're not fighting the Romans. No, I'm talking about your heart. Here's a brand new norm. You heard it say that you're going to love your friends and hate your enemies. He's like, who cares? Anybody can do that. Here's the new norm. That's the old norm. Here's the new norm. I want you to hate or love the people who hate you. That's the new norm. Anybody can do it the old school way. But what I'm asking you is to absolutely learn what it means to love people who hate you. And when you find yourself struggling in that, Jesus said, what I want you to do, because you will struggle, because this is a struggle, isn't it, to love people who hate you. Jesus said, when you find yourself in that struggle, here's what I want you to do. I want it to bring out the best in you. I want you in that struggle, in that moment, that tension that you feel. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to pray. I want you to invite me into that. I want you to invite me into you. I want you to invite me into that other prayer. I want you to invite me into that relationship. Invite me into the problem. I want you, when you feel that struggle, because you will, I want you to start praying and praying and praying and invite me into that struggle. Because ultimately, Jesus said, I want you to grow up. I want you to grow up. I want you to be disciples of Jesus that are mature. Disciples of Jesus who are mature say, God has redeemed me, and now I am going to redeem you in the relationship. A people that says, I will absorb the sin and pain and death from others, and I'll give back love. People who say, I am now the new norm for us as we're going to learn what it means to love our enemies. See, when Jesus shared this with the people, you need to know this contextually. When Jesus shared this with people, it was very offensive. Very offensive. Because they're looking at this young buck as a guy who's going to get on a white steed and lead